I got uninvited from my mom Sep's birthday because I didn't set look good next to my sister Sep's boyfriend. Ironically, I was actually his boss. He looked me in the eye and said, "If you still insist on coming home, don't set call me your father." 3 weeks later, on my mom's birthday, the power, water, and internet at their house all shut off. Follow my story. You might recognize parts of yourself in it. Hello, my name is Ryan. I'm 30 years old and live in a small town about 40 minutes from Seattle. Every morning I make coffee, check the weather, and drive less than 10 minutes to work. I co-founded a small technology company focused on sustainable energy. Not everyone, including my family, fully understands what I do. They still think I spend my days tightening screws or fixing machines. I don't mind that they're mistaken. I've never felt the need to explain. When people ask about my family, my parents or my sister Jessica, I simply smile and say it's been a while since we talked. That's it. I'm not hiding anything. I just don't see the point in repeating the story. I haven't contacted them in over 2 years. No calls, no texts, no holidays, no birthdays, nothing. Just a long, calm stretch, as if the connection had been severed, and no one tried to repair it. I used to believe family was everything, but 2 years ago, on my mother's birthday, that changed. 3 weeks before that birthday, I had booked a trip and taken time off work. The plan was simple: go home a couple of days early, stay for a few days, and help with preparations. Just like every year, nothing unusual. I called my mom, but my father answered after 2 rings. I casually mentioned I'd be home early and asked if they needed me to bring anything or help with anything. At first, his response was vague, then hesitant. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded unusual, heavier than normal, as if he was avoiding something. "Ryan, if possible, maybe don't set come home this year." I assumed he was just worried about my schedule. It's fine, Dad. It's fine, got everything sorted. No trouble at all." A pause followed. Then he spoke again, firmer and colder. "Jessica Sep's bringing her boyfriend home this year. He Sep's a manager, someone important, speaks well and carries himself properly. And your job, it's Sep's not exactly comfortable to talk about, so it's Sep's best if you don't set come." Heat rushed from the back of my neck to my face. My heartbeat quickened, and I gripped my coffee mug tighter. "What did you just say? Are you serious?" He didn't set back down, soften, or retract. He said plainly, "You coming home would just embarrass the whole family. If you insist on coming, don't set call me your father." Then he disconnected. I stood there, shaking, the apartment silent. No TV, no footsteps, just me staring into space, trying to process it. His words repeated in my mind. "You coming home would just embarrass the whole family. If you still insist on coming back, don't set call me your father." I wondered if I'd misheard, but no. Every word was deliberate, cold and unyielding. My jaw clenched, my throat tightened. Then memories surfaced. I realized I had been quietly paying all of their bills, electricity, water, and internet, for over 2 years. Nobody had acknowledged it, and now they were calling me the family shame. I opened my phone, hands still slightly trembling. I checked my banking app and reviewed the transaction history. My only goal was to see how much I'd spent on them over 2 years. Every month, nearly $400 for power, water, and internet, paid automatically without fail. I scrolled to the bottom. Total spent, $9,842.17. I stared at that number. Not in shock, but in a strange calm. Not grief or anger, just emptiness. Nearly $10,000. And now they label me the family shame. Looking at the list, a question formed silently. Has Jessica ever done as much for our parents? I wasn't seeking recognition or holding a score. I was just noticing that fairness had never been considered in our family. I had been invisible my whole life. In family photos, I was often hidden behind someone else, or at the edge of the frame. Jessica was always at the center. Birthdays, graduations, breakups. She was the hope, the future-oriented child our parents proudly mentioned. And me, if mentioned at all, I was a footnote. I believed, if I worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and quietly handled everything, they would notice. They never did. I started covering their utility costs 2 years ago. After my mother called, worrying about rising living expenses, she hesitated, but asked if I could help. I agreed, assuming it would be temporary. Months passed, and the pattern continued. Jessica never contributed, and excuses were made. Just help us this month. Your sister will pitch in next time. Or she's covering Dad's medical bills. I knew none of it was true. Still, I sent nearly $400 each month, quietly, without complaint, because it was the right thing to do. I thought my efforts would be noticed. They weren't. Instead, they called me the family shame. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, surrounded by silence. I wasn't angry or heartbroken anymore. Just one clear thought remained. Enough. I opened my banking app and reviewed the automatic payments to cover their expenses: power, water, and internet, again confirming the full extent of my contribution. I went through each account one by one and canceled them without hesitation. I did it quietly, not out of revenge, but to protect the one thing I still had: my self-respect, the only thing they hadn't taken from me. About a week later, I received a message from my mother, written in the same calm tone she always used. There was no acknowledgement of what had happened, no apology, just a request. The internet bill is due. Can you take care of it? I read it, stared at the screen for a while, then set the phone down without replying. Not to make a statement, but because the first thing they thought to say was a request for money. No, are you okay? Or can we talk? Nothing. So I stayed silent. And in that silence, I found clarity. 2 weeks later, my father called. The phone rang a few times, then stopped. I didn't set answer. A few minutes later, he left a voicemail, sharp and impatient as usual. The power company called. This month's set's bill has been paid. What set's going on? There was no concern, no mention of the conversation we'd had when I said I'd be home for my mother's birthday. I listened, then set the phone face down on the table. Again, I said nothing. My mother's birthday arrived about 3 weeks after my father had told me not to come home. The party went on as usual. Her favorite roasted chicken cake, from her favorite bakery, and a few close relatives around the table. Except for me, everything was planned and executed perfectly. That afternoon, at 4 p.m., I sat in my living room with a cup of coffee long gone cold when my phone chimed. It was my mother. I stared at her name, then set the phone down. I didn't respond. A few minutes later, my father called, then Jessica. 3 calls in, under 10 minutes. I let them go unanswered. I remained where I was, leaning lightly against the chair, eyes fixed on the fogged glass. Outside, the sky was gray, cold in a quiet way that hinted winter was approaching. About 10 minutes later, messages started arriving. Mom, first, Ryan. The power's been turned off. The house is dark. Please pay the bill. I read it silently. There was no anger, just a hollow feeling, the kind that comes when you've spent years supporting a family and now are the only one left to bear the weight. Then my father, no water. We can set cook. Handle it now. Then Jessica, internet sits down. Guests are arriving. Please fix this urgently. I looked at the clock, 5:12 p.m. I remembered canceling all automatic payments exactly 3 weeks ago, right after my father told me if I insisted on coming home, I should never call him Dad again. And now, during the party, they told me not to attend. Everything was shutting down: power, water, internet. right when it was most needed. I didn't respond. I didn't feel the need to explain. I just rotated my cold coffee cup in my hands and stared out the window. In that moment, I realized they weren't calling because they missed me. They were calling because no one else was left to take care of things. Around 6 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time non-stop, but it wasn't my parents or Jessica. It was relatives who visit only on holidays, yet feel entitled to judge. Messages arrived in waves. Some called me disrespectful. One said, "You embarrassed your mother in front of everyone." Another, quieter but sharp, "Your sister was right. People like you shouldn't show up on a happy day." I read them all without replying. Not because silence meant agreement, but because I was tired of defending myself to people who always chose the crowd over what was right. Then Aunt Lauren called on video. She was the only family member who still trusted me. I paused before answering on the second ring. Her face appeared, lit by the yellow kitchen light I knew so well. The room behind her felt different tonight. Clinking silverware, uneasy laughs, low conversation. She looked at me warmly, but with concern. "You said you're not going to pay for it, Ryan." I spoke slowly, dragging up a memory I had buried too long. "Auntie, it was Dad who told me not to come. He said if I insisted on showing up, I shouldn't call him my father anymore." She went quiet, studying the room behind her. Then chaos erupted. I heard my mother's voice. "Tell him I'm ashamed of him. How could he do this today?" My father. "It's not a big deal, just paying a few bills. Why get petty over money?" Another voice, likely my uncle. "Poor Jessica, having to deal with a brother like that." Jessica appeared, arms crossed, lips twisted. "Mom's been crying all day. Does he even care?" I said nothing. I observed, silent, the only defense I had. As the call ended, another face appeared on screen. A young man in a suit, hair perfectly combed. He hesitated, then said, "Hey boss." I froze. I hadn't expected this. Not here. Not tonight. Then I realized he was Jessica's boyfriend, one of the new personnel from our southern branch. We'd exchanged emails. He'd sent reports. But I didn't know he was the boyfriend everyone wanted to impress. The kitchen behind Aunt Lauren held its breath. Someone whispered, "Wait, he called Ryan bosses?" Another, "Does that mean Ryan is the boyfriend's boss?" The murmurs grew. I stayed quiet, simply watching. Then the young man straightened, looked past the camera, and spoke clearly. "In case you didn't know, I work at Pacific Terratech. Mr. Ryan is one of the co-founders." His voice cut through the noise, and the room fell silent. I nodded softly, gave a calm, even reply. "Hope your big introduction goes perfectly." Then I disconnected. That night, I slept soundly. No tossing, no waking with old questions. For the first time in years, I felt light, not satisfaction, but relief. Finally, they had recognized who I truly was. The next morning, before sunlight fully filtered through the thin curtains, I picked up my phone and checked my emails as usual. A few meeting reminders, some accounting notes, and then a name I didn't recognize. Hudson Kane. I opened the email. The first line caught my attention immediately. "To Sup and sorry. I didn't know you were Jessica Sepp's brother. I always respected you at the company." I arched an eyebrow, leaned into the pillow, and continued reading. Hudson explained that he was surprised to discover the family connection. Without softening the message, he wrote, "I didn't expect her to be like that. I'll be ending this relationship. Thank you for not putting me on the spot in front of everyone." I laid the phone on my chest and closed my eyes briefly. After a few minutes, I reopened the inbox and began typing a reply, slowly, clearly, without embellishment. "Hudson, that sips your decision. I don't expect anyone to act to stay in my good graces. Think carefully before you do anything. For the record, I don't bring family into the workplace." I hit send. No lingering emotion, no extra thought. For me, that was enough. Some things, once clarified, require nothing further. Around 10 a.m., while wrapping up a meeting with the department heads, my phone rang. Jessica's name appeared. I stared at it for a few seconds before declining, not out of anger or to make a point, but simply because I had no patience left for apologies that came after the damage was done. Within 5 minutes, a message arrived. I said, "I'm sorry. I didn't think Hudson would change like that. You said her his boss. If you said something, I said, "I'm sure," he said, "and listen. Please talk to him. Ask him to come back to me." I leaned against the hallway window, reading the message multiple times before responding, carefully and concisely. Hudson didn't set leave because I told him to. He left because of how you live, how you treat people, how you look down on what you don't set understand, and how you always assume a soft voice can steer anyone. I pressed send, returned the phone to my pocket, and went back to work. Less than a minute later, another message arrived. I know I messed up. This time I mean it. I sit, "Old change. Please believe me. Just this once." I did not reply. I read it, sat with it, and felt nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Sometimes the gap between two people isn't in the apology itself. It's in when it comes. I deleted the message and returned to my life. A week later, on a Friday afternoon, I walked back into the house from the garage and froze on the porch. My parents stood at the front door, each holding a small suitcase, looking exhausted from the journey. I didn't ask why they were here. This wasn't a casual visit. I opened the door and welcomed them inside. No tension, no forced politeness, just a choice to meet them on my terms. Tea steamed on the table. My father spoke first, apologizing quietly. My mother added that perhaps they had gone too far, and things shouldn't have reached this point. I listened, silent, to see if this apology marked the end of something or the start of something else. As expected, my father's tone shifted. "We're family, Ryan. Family helps each other. We raised you, sent you to school. Part of what you have now comes from us, right?" I looked at him, face neutral but stance firm. My mother spoke next, softly. "If you could maybe send about $2,000 a month. Just a little support. It sits not much for someone like you." I looked at them. The same people who once excluded me from a family event were now placing a monetary value on their apology. $2,000 a month, because I was their son. Their idea of fairness was that my success was a debt I owed them. I let out a quiet chuckle. Not loud, not mocking, just a sound of disbelief. I leaned back and asked calmly, "What about Jessica? How much will she contribute?" The room paused. My father glanced at my mother. She answered slowly, "Your sister's job is still unstable. The breakup with Hudson has been difficult for her." I nodded, unsurprised. Same old excuses, dressed in empathy, but nothing more. I looked at them and said firmly, "If she contributes $2,000 per month, I will match it. No more, no less. Or if you want me to cover the full amount, I will need a legal agreement confirming that after you both pass, the house belongs to me entirely." I waited. Silence. Then my father suddenly stood, slammed his palm on the hardwood table, tipping a teacup. He shouted, "You start setting conditions for your parents. We raised you for over 20 years, and now you want to nickel and dime us? What kind of life are you living?" I did not flinch. Hands on the chair, gaze steady, voice calm. "I think you both should leave my house." It wasn't a threat or anger, just a boundary. A limit to what respect could provide. No one said another word. Only the sound of luggage on the floor, and the door clicking shut. It's been 2 years since that day. I didn't block their numbers, change my email, or cut them off completely. I simply stopped reaching out and waited. No calls, no messages, no inquiries about birthdays, health, or even a simple "how are you?" I used to believe people could change. I've learned that not everyone does, especially those who've never acknowledged they were wrong. I continue to live, work, and go about my life. The difference now is, I no longer serve as an emotional ATM, giving endlessly in the name of obligation. Family is not a place to demand kindness and call it love. True family values you as a person, not as a source of money, backup, or last resort. Before I end this chapter, I'll ask you, was I wrong to refuse my parents' request for $2,000 per month, despite them being elderly and having raised me? I used to believe family could fix anything. After being treated as a stranger repeatedly, I chose to stand up and break the cycle. Perhaps I was cold, but maybe I was finally learning to value myself. Leave your thoughts below. I genuinely want to hear whether you agree or disagree. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to support the channel. Many more stories are waiting to be told. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.